Welcome to the Better Learning Podcast. My name is Jessica Westerduin, and I'm your host today, where we explore what it truly means to lead, design, and serve through a radically student-centered mindset. For us, being radically student-centered is about making courageous decisions, listening deeply to student voices, and designing learning environments and systems that help every learner thrive. Each episode, we sit down with education leaders who are living this out in real ways through their leadership, their culture, and the ways in which they lead every day. Today, we are excited to welcome two new members to our podcast. We have Regan Shields Ives, who serves as a principal and studio leader for Finegold Alexander Architects, and Amy Vachon, who serves as the principal at Gladstone at Barrows Elementary School in the Cranston Public School District in Rhode Island. In today's conversation, we'll discuss how they personally define radically student-centered and how that mindset is shaping real outcomes for students and communities in the Cranston Public School District. I'm going to have both of you introduce yourselves. Regan, if we could start with you, please walk us through your journey with education, design, and leadership.
Sure. So Regan Shields Ives, and I have been working in the K-12 space for about 22 years of my career at this point, and it really allows me to unite my passion for architecture and education. I just really love the process of taking this educational idea and transforming it into the built form, and working with educators like Amy and others along the way, and students as well. It really is a rewarding process when we get to the final result and the building is done, and it's truly a reflection of the educational goals for the particular district.
Absolutely. And 22 years, I'm very excited about to hear from that expertise as well. Have you always been in K-12 design?
So our firm has a wide range of different sectors, but that is one area that I got started on earlier in my career, and just something really clicked. I loved the process of designing schools. So I do other project types as well, but that is one specific area that I really love and focus on.
Absolutely. And thank you for sharing. And Amy, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and your education journey.
My name is Amy Vachon. I'm the principal at Gladstone Elementary School. Jessica, I have two buildings, actually. We're in swing spaces while our new school is being built. We're moving in after the end of this year. It should be done by May 1st, which is really exciting. But yes, I facilitate leading two buildings all week long. I've been in education for 23 years. I've been as a principal in Cranston for 4 years. I was an assistant principal in Cranston for 2 years. And then prior to that, I was an instructional coach working both with students and teachers in Connecticut for a couple of years, a technology teacher, kindergarten through 5th grade, and I spent 14 years in the classroom as an elementary teacher. So a lot of elementary time.
Absolutely. Was there a favorite grade to teach, Amy?
Fourth, all day long.
Fourth.
Curriculum, absolutely. Yep.
Ooh. Curriculum-wise, absolutely. It was 2nd grade for me as an elementary teacher as well. So very exciting to learn more about that as we go through our conversation today. We are going to start with kind of defining what radically student-centered means to you, or an image that comes to mind when you're thinking of really radically student-centered. And so when you hear radically student-centered, kind of what does that mean for you? And anyone can start.
So I think for me, it's throwing traditional out the window. Gladstone, especially for my building, we've spent a lot of time kind of growing out of our model that we currently have. Traditional is not necessarily the best approach when we're teaching kids, especially in my opinion, elementary student. Engagement and flexibility kind of go hand in hand, in my opinion. And having young children sitting in one space all day long with the same adult really is just not a great approach. And we've experienced it firsthand over the course of the last, 20 years with kids disengaging and, our academic skill gaps happening across the nation. And I think that the introduction of project-based learning has really opened doors for a lot of districts and schools to kind of think about being outside the box and not thinking traditionally anymore. I know personally we've spent a lot of time with like co-teaching and not necessarily teaching all content areas, just to kind of diversify the day for both staff and student movement, flexible furniture. So there's a lot of pieces that we've tried to start to change more naturally before we get into our new school, which will kind of aid in that process more easily for us because we have bigger spaces and these community style learning opportunities. But it can be done in a traditional setting. You can do it. And, you know, my staff has worked really hard to learn how to do that over the course of the last couple of years with me.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for sharing. I appreciated that I didn't hear furniture, right? It was more about being radically student centered is about the learning and the teaching, right? We're constantly going back to what we're putting in front of the students too. And I love that because it is more about what experiences and how we're setting the students up for success and less about the design, right? And I love that when we get to talk a little bit about Gladstone, you're actually taking the curriculum and the strategies you guys are already doing in the school, and now you're building a space that kind of matches that. And that is incredibly student-centered when you really think about what experience and what you're putting in front of those students. Absolutely. Regan, what about you? What do you find, or if you want to build off of Amy or anything else that you wanted to add?
I would build off of a lot of what Amy said, and it's telling because we're working so closely on the Gladstone Elementary School project. But to go back to the concept of radically student-centered, our approach to design, very similar to what Amy said, sort of throwing the norm out the window, we tried to, eliminate any preconceived notions of what we thought this building should look like from a design standpoint, and really started at the core of the educational goals of the project. So before, we even put our design lens on, we spent a lot of time understanding how they wanted to teach and learn within this building, and how shaping these spaces really had an impact on the ability to facilitate this, newer, different educational approach to teaching and learning. So it was a learning curve for us too at the beginning to really understand just the arrangement and adjacencies of spaces, and how some things that might be kind of typical in a school just don't really belong in this particular, design and this approach. So it was very fascinating to have the whole process come together. But then, as we started putting the design, really starting to design the space, there was a lot of, back and forth, probably more so than in other school projects where we've, went back and forth with the educational planner, constantly making sure that every design update, changes that we needed to make, because there is a sort of logistical, other constructability side to design. So things did need to change at, different phases of the design process, but always going back to make sure that this was, still focused on the student need, the educator's need. So that at the end of the day, when we open the doors, when Amy opens the doors next fall, it's genuinely a reflection of, the radically student-centered design.
Absolutely. And I think it's so important. I know we'll get to this in the conversation about how much emphasis was put on making sure everyone was at the table, and that you constantly went back to that vision process and collaborating with each other, because so many times we see projects like this that work in silos that aren't able or aren't willing to do that extra of like, let's get on a call real quick because so-and-so is not happening. And we see those missed opportunities come out and play out with the student outcomes when we have those happen as well. So I very much appreciate you sharing. And it actually led right into my first question was, because we have this unique opportunity, we have the architect and the design and the visionary and the head of the school together. Could you guys talk about, that trust building and that collaboration when you first started together, and how you got to a place where you are and you feel like and you're guiding to each other towards the same thing? So how did you really build that collaboration, that trust?
So it's interesting because Cranston's been working on designing new schools now for quite some time. There were two projects before Gladstone took off. So there have been other architects that have worked with the district. And so Gladstone kind of at the beginning was transitioning, and then Regan got brought in. And so it was like, oh no, is this going to be my partnership, or is something going to change again? And so hesitation at first, because I had experienced change in this project, and worry because I want to make sure that what the vision is that we see and the needs of Gladstone community are being met with our building design. And I think I had such a unique opportunity in this project because, like Regan said, I don't think that there would have been as much communication between the building leader and the architect that Cranston gave to me, which I'm so grateful for because my project is absolutely amazing. And I'll say that a million times. But it was tough at first because, we had put some work in already to get prepared. We were starting to get ready to transition out of old Gladstone and into swing spaces. And, that was a scary thought for my staff. And Regan and team came in and they were like, hey, we're here and we're working with you and we want to hear your voices and what your thoughts are. And it can be the biggest wish list. And yeah, we're not going to be able to give you all of it, but we're going to do our best to meet the needs of what your staff and students is looking for. And I think that that was so refreshing for us to know that we were being heard. And not just me, my teachers and my students. And I think that was like the start of our relationship and that built from there. So it was definitely scary at first, but I think Regan and team were just so accommodating right from the beginning for us that we felt, open and willing to work with.
And I'll just build on that. We, at the beginning of the design process, we had been given some parameters, but we set up these student engagement, teacher engagement, visioning sessions. And for us, that was so exciting because it was the first time we really got to interface with the educators, with the students. And I think it just brought the whole team together. And to that point about building trust or dispelling any, concerns somebody might have that we're coming in and we're just going to take over and, turn this in a different direction. So it was over the course of a number of days, a few weeks, and we did follow-ups and repeats. And so, to the point where we'd come back and engage with the students for other reasons and other aspects of the project. And, we started to see familiar faces, and it just really brought the whole community together. And, we were happy to share, even during the construction phase of the project, updates on the project so that the students could really see, their ideas and some of the things that they shared with us early on, really being constructed and built.
Yeah, and that empowerment, right? Seeing that their voices really do matter. And I'm hearing a lot of, you were able to say, or this relationship was able to say, this is what we're going to do, and I'm going to tell you why, and these are things we can't do. And I think that's something that we do have to name too, is that, there are limitations, and we want to dream absolutely as big as we possibly can, but we also need to be, smart with our budgetary decisions and ensure, again, that we don't have something that maybe looks nice but isn't functional. And you made sure to stay with that functionality. And thinking about those priorities for the Gladstone, I know that there are two communities combining, correct, into the one elementary, from what I was able to see. Can you talk about, what were some of the priorities of this, capital project, or of the ongoing capital project?
I think that the communication was so very important. Every step along the way, my students have been given updates. They've seen the construction happening in real time with drone footage. We were able to tour and go in and kind of give a video of what the building would be for them at the end of last year, which was so exciting. They have designed furniture that will be coming to the new school. So they've had a voice of what they thought would be a good piece of furniture that would benefit all of our kids. And that is being designed for them to come in. We did a session with our staff at the beginning where we kind of like showed them some blueprints, and they kind of like looked at the space, and like we were able to have like real conversations about, okay, this door is not going to work because this is what we experience on a day-to-day basis with this group of students. And it would be smarter if we had a door here. Or we need acoustics in the music room because our music teacher travels the entire building and all we hear is singing and band instruments all day. And we don't want to have that anymore. So it was like real conversations that, Regan and the team were able to take back and put into the design. So that communication, that open line where my teachers would have questions for me and I could email Regan and somebody would shoot me back a response right away. And to this day, I've written Regan recently about some changes and I'm like, can you just fill me in? And she always comes back to me right away. I don't ever have a concern about the communication. And I think the team in Cranston has been great with that too. I've been brought into a lot of the meetings, which has been so super helpful to keep my staff aware of what's happening. As far as the schools coming together, we are acquiring one of the other elementary schools. So they were brought in later in the design process. And there's just some pieces that I don't have control over who comes to the new school. Whereas my staff all naturally travels. It's just different for that building. So we didn't want to provide professional development for teachers that might not be coming to the new school. And we also weren't sure if all of the building was coming, if some of the building was coming. So to give all of the information to all of the students wasn't necessarily appropriate while we were going through the building process. However, they have been included now on all of the updates to the construction as of the last few meetings that we've had with Gildane. So that's been really exciting. And we're actually going over for the last one on April 2nd. So our students will see the last construction update, both at Arlington and Gladstone, before the building is complete on May 1st.
That is very exciting for all of them too. And I'm absolutely sure. And you had said most of the students are moving, but some of the students or teachers won't be moving with them too, but still have the option to be included in this process. It's still part of their public school district, which I was curious about. There's high schools, there's middle schools, there's elementary schools. From a little bit of digging I could do, it's a very large district. And how can we bring in the other schools that might not be, getting this immediate budget, new furniture, new building, but are still part, right? They're going to come into this elementary school or maybe move and go to a middle school, and that cohesiveness. Do you have any, either tips or things that you guys are thinking about for the district?
So Cranston has definitely done small projects within some of the secondary buildings so that there's some transfer. We've done project-based learning for kindergarten through 12th grade. So all of the trainings that the elementary teachers received for these new spaces was delivered to all of the secondary levels. So that has been very helpful and something that has been followed through with, because I do think that provides that radical thinking for students and giving them voice and choice. And it's very appropriate for secondary level for sure. So that is something that has been in place in Cranston for 7 years now. And building to building, you see different projects that are happening. So that is definitely important. I know that Cranston is probably looking to make adjustments down the line, but these projects, Eden Park, Garden City, and Gladstone, were part of one specific bond for the city. So now it would be for them to continue the work in a separate entity.
Yeah, absolutely. That curriculum cohesiveness is absolutely going to benefit all the students who are going through this process too, because, kind of like we talked about, it's really about the differences that we're seeing with the students and how we put materials in front of them or ask them to engage in the materials, right? But definitely a huge district that is investing a lot in making sure that these students feel included and feel inclusive, especially with the community too. I know that curiosity centers were brought up, and that's something you guys were doing and you guys are looking into. Could anyone talk more about, what's the goal for teaching and the learning experience in these curiosity centers, which sparked my interest immediately?
I think one of the hot topics that we had constantly was that we just didn't have space. Gladstone, I had a very big building before and 500 plus students, and there was just never any space. And so that was always at the forefront of our discussions when it came to this project. It's not just the classroom space, but it's the space around us and how can we utilize it as a team so that it's fluid, but it's also versatile for everyone. So I have a lot of support teams, reading intervention, math intervention, speech and language pathologist, occupational therapists, physical therapists that work in my building, and they're constantly like finding a corner to do their service time. The Curiosity Center provides all of those elements so anybody could take that space and utilize it. There's also sensory pieces that are built into it. So, if we have dysregulated students that are just not transitioning well, we have that ability to use those sensory approaches no matter where you are in the building. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the social worker and school psychologist's office. But it's an opportunity to build independence as well. So our students, especially, in 2nd through 5th grade, we want them to learn how to do things independently. And so working outside of their learning community and being trusted to be in an independent setting is what we're requiring them to want to be able to do. So it was really just an opportunity for space to be shared and also for us to, allow our students to have more choice and be more independent in comparison to being in a regular classroom.
And how that translates to the architecture. The building is actually very compact and very efficient. We have the learning communities, these, different neighborhoods where the different grades, do a core work, of their learning, teaching and learning in those spaces. But when we talked about having these shared spaces that were also flexible, but encompassed programs like the library, media center, the gym, the cafeteria. We wanted to create a space where it just drew everybody together. So we have the learning communities kind of anchored on either side. And then the Curiosity Center is all of the space in between that houses those particular shared use programs. So the makerspace, the art classroom, music, the media center, library, these are all spaces that the entire school community will flow into. And so they're really at the center of the building. And if you were to see the building, the design of it, you can almost even tell like where this Curiosity Center is, because, the learning neighborhoods are these kind of controlled blocks on either side. And then we have this, design that kind of cascades down, from the top floor down all the way down to the lower level where the gym is located. And that is this program shared use space, not only for the school community, but one of the design challenges for us was to create a design where some of these components could be used by the greater Cranston community after hours, on weekends. And so to your earlier question about, how do we draw in the rest of the community that may not be using this building on a daily basis, there's definitely opportunity for other people to have the opportunity to use the building.
Yeah, absolutely. And I believe I was reading, this building for adaptability, because we don't know what education is going to look like in 5 and 10 and 15 and 20 years. And the flow of those learning communities going into the centers and the classrooms in itself just allows students to feel very engaged and inviting, right? It invites them to be in this new space and maybe think about learning in a different way, which I mean, the blueprint itself looks incredible.
When we work with schools at K-12, it's not just about furniture or design. It's about impact. Our radically student-centered approach puts students at the center of every decision. From that first conversation to the final walkthrough, we're focused on creating spaces that actually work for the kids, the teachers, and the community. So if you're looking to do more than just check a box on your next project, let's talk. Visit K12.com. That's KAY-TWELVE.com and see how we're helping schools transform learning one student at a time. Because at K-12, it's not just about projects and furniture, it's about purpose.
What are you, if there was one thing that you're most excited about? Doors open. Amy and Regan, both of you should answer it. Doors are open day one. What are you most excited about? Either student, teacher, community. What are you most excited about and proud of? Let's try both of those.
I am so excited to be back together as a whole community personally.
Yeah.
It's been a very, very cumbersome 3 years for us to be separated. If I can give a shout out to my staff, we are such a team. Like I said, I'm going into 7 years in Cranston. Gladstone team has been together for the most part much longer than that. These teachers don't leave Gladstone, and there's a reason, because they work so well together and they love our community. And so it's been very hard to be apart and try to facilitate everything. So I think my biggest excitement is to be back together as one and to just build in our community. Like, our community is so excited. We're a neighborhood school. There's been trial and tribulation for transportation because we're across the city. So giving this opportunity back to our community and then just our beautiful school. This is something that, has not existed in this area for 70 years. That was when that school had been built and was brand new. So there's so much opportunity with this building for the community, like Regan just said, and the partnership. So I'm really excited for it to be open.
Absolutely. Regan, what about you?
I'm excited for the students to walk in and to see themselves reflected in the design. One of the things that we worked really closely with Amy and the students was creating a mural that uses the students' artwork. It says welcome in a number of different languages that are spoken at the school. And it's the first thing that you see when you walk in. So what we really want the students to do is feel welcome and to feel that this is their school. And so a lot of that work has been done to create this space and to have things that we heard from them translated into the building design. So they'll see some familiar aspects, from these conversations and these student engagement workshops that we've had with them over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. And for you, Regan, what does post occupancy look like? Do you come, to visit to ensure that everything? Just curious with you, and obviously with a project that's so near and dear to your heart, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we, when the doors open, we don't go away. We certainly will be there to, help in any way if there are things that come up, once they're, living in the space, if questions arise. But as far as the post occupancy, really sort of understanding, is the building meeting the educational visioning and planning goals? We have a series of visits where we do come back. We have surveys and questions. So I'll be following up with Amy on that. And we definitely, do not want to be strangers to the school community. There's a lot of people that have a lot of interest in this project. And I know already I've had many requests to come and visit the school. So I think this is also an opportunity for other either designers, educators to learn from this project, as they have from some of the other projects that Amy had mentioned prior to the Gladstone project. I know we learned a lot by going and touring the other two buildings that had been completed. And so we hope that this becomes just part of the continuing educational process for educators and students and designers alike.
Yeah, this immersion, and collaboration between all aspects of the project is really, there's no opportunity that's going to be missed here, right? The community was involved. The teachers were literally building a school so that they can do what they've been doing, which is absolutely incredible. So I very much appreciate you sharing a little bit about Gladstone, reflecting a little bit, right? A lot of people, Amy, are going through this too. Either their first big project or, that my community is no longer cohesive and we really need to get back to that and we're pausing. What advice would you give to leaders who are starting this journey?
Professional learning opportunities are crucial. If you want to have buy-in for a change from traditional to learning community style or any type of project, maybe it's small scale and it's just a part of your building, you have to give your staff the opportunity to understand and be able to internalize what it's going to be. I spent a lot of time, setting up for them to go see the other buildings. And again, our projects are all different. Eden Park, Garden City, and Gladstone are all different. but it was opportunities for them to at least envision, not just looking at a piece of paper of what their space would look like, of how it could work. And then just, trials. Like we've spent the last 3 years trying things, project-based learning, co-teaching, growing out of the space, flexible furniture, so that it's not all foreign on day one. These things have been happening for us, and it's okay. It's okay if we make mistakes, and it's okay if we change things, because we know it's not necessarily going to work on for the first model that we put in place. But at least we have the understanding of what we need it to be so that we can figure it out together as a team. So I think that those opportunities are so important. Otherwise, you're having a staff kind of work in silos and nothing changes.
Yep, absolutely. And I'm going to reiterate a quote that you already had said. You're throwing tradition out the window. And in order to really do that, you have to change it's changing your mindset. Like, no, we're going to try it. We're going to try it, even if it's hard, even if you're sprinting in heels from one building to another building, which I'm sure is very apparent. It is throwing the tradition out the window. And I love that you said it. So I'm really glad we got to put that quote back in the top. So thank you, Amy. I appreciate it. Regan, what about you? What is a piece of advice that you'd either give to, to someone who's starting out with this, or a piece of advice for, how successful your immersion and collaboration was, and what you would give to other architects as well?
Yeah, I think just to further emphasize what Amy had said, one of the big differences that I've seen so far, and we haven't even, they haven't moved into the building yet, is the amount of time and dedication that Cranston has given to the professional development of understanding how they are going to teach and learn differently in this building. And that's something that, unfortunately, we've been involved with other learning, communities where they have an idea and they want very much to think differently about education, but there's not that follow through in terms of how to work with the teachers before they even move into the space to understand what it's going to be like to be in a space that feels different, and how to, understand how to, teach in that kind of environment. So I'm really excited that this work, and I know it's been a lot of work, and I really, admire Amy and all of the teachers that have been involved that have gone through this, because I think it's going to make, once they move into the building, it's just going to make it a lot more seamless. And I think the teachers and the students will be happier to just, hit the ground running versus trying to figure things out. There's always going to be a little bit of a learning curve. So that's one thing that has been very different and exciting. One of the things that's been very different and exciting about this project. And I'll just come back to say, the advice that I would give to anybody else, the amount of communication and work that we did together with our educational planner, who, was also working very closely with Amy. And we had many meetings where we were all, there together. So there was so much communication that it made the design better, because we were not just working in a vacuum. Amy's ideas, weren't just kind of put off to one side. Like, we really knit everything together. And I think the building completing, in the next couple months will really show the results of all that work together, because there are things that we designed that probably wouldn't have done it that way if we hadn't had these multiple conversations and these workshops working together. So that was a really exciting part of the process, and it takes a lot of work, but I think the end result is just much more successful.
Absolutely. I mean, you're building a school, and I just wrote down a few. You're building a school with student input, staff input, resource teacher input, co-teacher input, media center input, community input, student input, leadership input. That there is why we do and why we love what we do, right? I've been in education a very long time, and I'm very, very passionate when it comes to having students having experiences that we didn't have, right? what you're building is truly phenomenal, and there is no missed opportunity. And as someone who is not part of the project, I am very excited to see the videos of the students walking in for the first time, because it's an incredible experience and you should be extremely proud for what you guys are creating. And I just appreciate your time. I wanted to highlight, if there is a website or space where listeners could maybe learn more, see all the pictures of the engagement sessions, is there a website or a place that you would refer a listener to so that they can learn more about the project?
Cranston has a construction update that we've been doing. As far as like the engagement, those we do have those. I don't have them posted. We put them into like our communication for the community and our family. But it's certainly something that I have no problem putting up. We have a website for our school, so that is definitely something that we could share. We have many.
Yeah, they can absolutely go to the school website, and also Finegold Alexander Architects. I know that you guys have a page too, but if there is any updates or any photos or anything after the opening, I'm sure people would be really excited to see the results of that.
Yeah, we definitely will be updating. Right now we have renderings, we have some diagrams, we have some construction progress photos, but when we get to the opening and the students are in the building, we will come back and photograph that, probably even do some videos. So all of that will be shared on our website as well.
Absolutely. Well, thank you both. I do appreciate your time, your expertise, learning about this project, learning every little detail. I really do appreciate you guys sitting down with me. If listeners would like to hear more or share their own radically student-centered moments, we invite you to like, comment, and share at betterlearningpodcast.com.
The Better Learning Podcast is produced by Matt Rogers and edited by Callie Jones. The views and opinions shared on this podcast are those of the individual speaking and do not necessarily represent the perspectives of their affiliated companies, organizations, or associations.